I want you to look closely at this. Go on, don't be shy. It's a dusty railway timetable from the late 19th century. Stained with rain, maybe a little bit of coal dust. The ink is fading. It smells of old paper and forgotten journeys. It seems like a harmless relic, doesn't it? The kind of thing you'd find in a dusty antique shop, a curiosity and nothing more. Well, I'm here to tell you that you're wrong. This isn't just a piece of paper. It's a weapon. It's a legal document. It's a social contract that you, your parents, and your grandparents signed without ever reading the terms and conditions. Because this seemingly innocent artifact, and thousands like it, is part of a system that secretly dictates every single second of your life. It is the reason your alarm clock screams at you at 7 a.m. It's the reason you feel the pressure of a 5 p.m. deadline. It's the reason you can book a flight to the other side of the world and know, with absolute certainty, when you will arrive. This paper decides when you wake up, when you work, when you eat, and even when you sleep. It has more power over your daily existence than any law passed by any government. So the real question isn't, what is it? The real question is, how did it gain so much power? Who had the audacity to decide the hour for everyone on Earth? And more importantly, what did we all have to sacrifice to fall in line? Today, we're not just looking at an artifact, we are strapping time itself to the operating table and conducting an autopsy. We are going to find the ghost in the machine. To understand the coup, you first have to understand the world that was overthrown. Before this piece of paper existed, the world was a beautiful, chaotic, and wonderfully human mess of different times. Your time was your time, or, more accurately, it was your town's time. And it was beautifully simple. Noon was noon. The moment when the sun reached its highest point in the sky, right above your head. That was the anchor for your entire day. And it worked perfectly. In the city of Bristol, when the sun was directly overhead, the great church bells would ring out, and everyone knew it's midday. Time for lunch, a break from the fields, or a shift change at the workshop. But just 100 miles down the road in London, their noon, the moment the sun was highest in their sky, was a full 10 minutes later. And 100 miles in the other direction, in Plymouth, noon was another 10 minutes earlier. Did anybody care? Not in the slightest. Why would they? News traveled at the speed of a galloping horse, and so did you. If it took you 2 days to travel from Plymouth to London, what did a 10 or 20-minute difference matter? Your world and your time was local. A letter written in the morning might not be read for a week. A person's day was governed by the rhythm of sunlight and shadow, the crow of the rooster, and the rumbling of their own stomach. Time was a fluid, natural, and deeply personal thing. Imagine that existence for a second. Imagine living in a world where every single town has its own time zone. It sounds almost poetic, doesn't it? A world free from the tyranny of the clock. A town's time was part of its identity, as unique as its accent or its architecture. Business was done face-to-face, appointments were kept with a certain flexibility, and life moved at a human pace. But this patchwork quilt of local times was fragile. It was a system built for a slow world. And the world was about to get very, very fast. Then this happened. The steam engine. A coughing, shuddering, smoke-belching beast of iron and fire that utterly annihilated the old definition of distance. It was the 19th century equivalent of teleportation. A journey that once took days of punishing travel by horse-drawn coach could now be completed in a matter of hours, in relative comfort. The railways were a miracle. They stitched the country together with threads of iron, pumping goods, people, and information through the nation's arteries at breathtaking speed. But this miracle came with a terrifying and unforeseen side effect. It created a problem. A massive, dangerous, and mind-bogglingly expensive problem. And the problem was time itself. A train conductor, a proud man with a pocket watch meticulously set to London time, would leave the capital at what he knew to be 8 a.m. After a chuffing, roaring journey, he'd pull into Bristol. He'd check his watch. Let's say it's 10 a.m. But he looks up at the Bristol station clock, which is set to the local Bristol sun, and it reads 9:50 a.m. So, is the train early? Is it on time? According to whose time? A passenger wanting to catch a connecting train in Bristol might look at the station clock and think he has 20 minutes to spare, when in reality, the London time train is pulling out of the station right now. Schedules were an absolute nightmare. A single page of a timetable might have to list arrival and departure times in 3 or 4 different local times, making it almost impossible to read. Merchants lost fortunes because their perishable cargo would arrive on time according to the train schedule, but sit rotting on the platform for an hour before the local time. Workers were scheduled to unload it. But this was far, far worse than just a logistical headache. It was deadly. The biggest danger was on single-track lines. Imagine 2 powerful steam engines, tons of unstoppable metal, hurtling towards each other on the same narrow track. Their only protection is a carefully planned schedule. They are supposed to pass each other at a specific siding at a specific moment. But the driver of the westbound train has his watch set to London time. The driver of the eastbound train has his set to the local time of the last town he passed through, a difference of maybe 7 minutes. Each believes he is exactly where he's supposed to be at exactly the right time. But they are both catastrophically wrong. The ensuing collision is not an accident, it's an inevitability. It's a disaster written by 2 different clocks. The beautiful chaos of 1,000 different local times could not survive the brutal, unforgiving mathematics of the industrial age. The system was literally breaking, and a solution had to be found, fast. The solution didn't come from the government. It didn't come from scientists or philosophers. It came from the very industry that was causing the problem. The fix started here with the railway companies themselves. In 1840, the formidable Great Western Railway in Britain, under the visionary and famously impatient engineer Isambard Kingdom Brunel, threw down the gauntlet. They issued a simple, radical decree: all of their stations, all of their trains, all of their timetables, and all of their employees, from the high-level manager to the lowly track worker, would operate on a single time, London time, the time of the capital. It was a rebellion against thousands of years of human tradition. They were effectively firing the sun. They called it, quite simply, railway time. And at first, the public resisted. This was seen as an arrogant power grab by the big city. Who were these railway barons to tell a town like Bath or Oxford when noon was? It felt unnatural. It felt wrong. For several years, you would see public clocks, especially at town halls and post offices, with 2-minute hands. One long, elegant hand showed the traditional, God-given local time, and a second, often painted red, showed the new, artificial railway time. It created a kind of temporal schizophrenia. People argued in the streets, are you meeting me at the real 4 o'clock or the company's 4 o'clock? It was a culture war fought on the faces of clocks. But you can't fight the future. Bit by bit, the railways won. Their network was the lifeblood of the nation's economy. If you were a merchant who wanted to ship goods, a farmer who wanted to sell produce, or simply a person who wanted to travel, you had no choice. You had to get on their time. But how did they ensure this new, unified time was accurate across hundreds of miles? You couldn't just send a runner with a good watch. That's where the railway's silent partner came in, the electric telegraph. For the first time in human history, information could travel faster than a person. It was practically instantaneous. And this was the key. Every morning, the Royal Observatory in Greenwich, London, the heart of Britain's maritime and scientific empire, would measure time with astronomical precision. At precisely 10 a.m., a signal would whisper down the newly laid electric telegraph wires that ran alongside the train tracks. At stations all across the country, a needle would twitch, a bell might ring, and station masters would meticulously set their clocks. It was a daily ritual of synchronization, a single, invisible pulse emanating from one room in London that set the rhythm for the entire nation. We had sacrificed the sun for the schedule. The nation was conquered. So how do you take this audacious national idea and make it global? You call a meeting. But first, you have to look across the Atlantic, because the Americans were facing the exact same problem, but on a continent-spanning, almost unimaginable scale. If Britain's time was a messy patchwork, America's was a full-blown chaotic explosion. At one point, American railroads had to operate by over 100 different local times. Major cities had dozens of competing railroad times. The situation was so absurd that in 1883, the railroad companies, led by a man named William F. Allen, took matters into their own hands, just as they had in Britain. They bypassed the government entirely, and on a single day, Sunday, November 18th, 1883, the day of 2 noons, they simply switched the nation over to a new system of 4 standardized time zones. It was a staggering act of corporate power that completely reshaped American life overnight. With both Britain and the United States having proven that standard time was not only possible but necessary, the stage was set for the final act. In October 1884, at the request of the U.S. President, representatives from 26 nations gathered in the stately halls of Washington, D.C. for the International Meridian Conference. Their mission was colossal, to do for the entire world what the railways did for Britain and America. Their job was to weave the whole planet into a single, synchronized, planetary rhythm. And it was a fight. This wasn't some quiet academic debate. National pride and global prestige were on the line. The French argued fiercely that the prime meridian, the 0 point of world time and longitude, should run through the Paris Observatory. It was a matter of scientific and cultural honor. Others made their own claims. But the cold, hard logic of commerce and the brute fact of the British Empire's global dominance won the day. At that time, over 70% of the world's commercial shipping used sea charts that referenced Greenwich, London, as the starting point for longitude. To choose anywhere else would mean redrawing most of the world's maps. So, the decision was made. A purely imaginary line on the map, running through the eyepiece of a specific telescope in a specific observatory in Greenwich, was officially designated longitude 0, the center of the world's time. From that single, arbitrary line, the globe was sliced into 24 neat, predictable, one-hour time zones. A planetary clock was born. They also agreed on a universal day, starting at midnight, finally killing off the ancient practice of starting the day at noon. It was one of the most audacious, and yet one of the quietest, restructurings of human society ever attempted. Now I want you to pause and really think about what this means. This new global system, this invisible infrastructure of time, wasn't a physical thing. You couldn't build it out of steel or stone. It was an idea, a shared agreement. In fact, it was built on something much more fragile and much more powerful: trust. It required the trust of billions of people. Trust in the complex astronomical observations being made in Greenwich. Trust in the wound spring chronometers being built in a watchmaker's shop. Trust in the telegraph operator in some remote outpost tapping out the time signal. And trust in the stark, black and white lines on a railway timetable like this one. This is the moment of truth. The artifact becomes an echo. The standard time that governs our lives represents a profound trade-off. We sacrificed our ancient, natural connection to the local sun for what? For efficiency. For safety. For the seamless operation of a global economy. We gave up the sun in our sky for a clock on a wall, and in return, we got the modern world. Every single time you check your phone to see what time it is, you are plugging into the ghost of this 19th century machine. The choices made by those engineers and diplomats over a century ago are humming silently inside your pocket. Let's bring this into our world now. Your digital calendar that effortlessly syncs meetings between you in New York, a colleague in Berlin, and a client in Tokyo? It's only possible because of that 1884 conference. Your flight schedule that tells you precisely when you'll depart London and arrive in Los Angeles, even accounting for crossing 8 time zones? That's the legacy of railway time. The countdown to a global product launch, a blockbuster movie premiere, or the New Year's Eve ball drop that rolls sequentially across the planet. It's all powered by that decision to slice the world into 24 neat segments, all anchored to a telescope in London. Even your GPS relies on this. The satellites overhead contain atomic clocks accurate to the nanosecond. If their time were off by even a tiny fraction of a second from the clocks on the ground, your phone would think you're miles away from where you actually are. Time has become an invisible backbone, the hidden operating system of our daily lives, and it's a direct imprint of choices made by men in suits long before we were ever born. So, after our autopsy, what's the final verdict? Time, as we experience it, isn't a private possession. It's not really a natural phenomenon anymore. It is a shared infrastructure, as real and as vital as our electrical grids or our internet cables, forged by collective trust and the relentless demands of a world accelerating at an impossible speed. This dusty timetable isn't a relic of the past, it's a mirror. And it reflects the rigid, clockwork rhythm that crosses every border, powers every market, and ticks relentlessly inside every single screen you own. And this investigation, this process of uncovering the hidden systems that run our world, doesn't stop here. If you think the story of time is wild, you won't believe the hidden history of the simple lines drawn on our maps and how they secretly define our wealth, our politics, and even our identity. I explored that incredible story in the video that is appearing on your screen right now. I highly recommend you watch it next. And for our question today, when did you first truly realize how connected the world's time is? Maybe it was planning a late-night call to a relative in another country, or realizing you missed a global online event because you got the time zone wrong. Let me know your story in the comments below. I read them all, and I'm fascinated to hear your experiences. Finally, what we do here, on Archives of Humanity, is uncover these hidden systems.